So design thinking is a multidisciplinary subject, and it is a cross-disciplinary where we can see that people from various discipline uh, make design thinking as a important way of how to reasoning about a product. And normally when we talk about design thinking, it is about a connective ability of human beings. And as we know, design thinking consists of three elements. One is understanding of the strategy. Second is understanding of design methodology. And the third one is understanding of a design development process. So today we are lucky because Zakiyah will talk about design development process. And before we get started, I'm going to go through some housekeeping to ensure you can interact with myself and the speaker. First, if you wish to ask the presenter a question, please click on the raise hand icon on the screen. And we also have an open chat features enabled to access this and chat with other online attendees. Simply click on the icon, and we invite you to participate by selecting your responses when they appear on your screen. And if you experience any issues in hearing today's webinars, please contact Unit Center for Innovative Delivery and Learning Development, or CIDL, which is under the Office of Deputy Vice Chancellor, Academic and Internationalization. Their support team will help you troubleshoot any issues. I would like to welcome our speakers today. Welcome Zakiyah Hasan, a senior lecturer of industrial design, which is under the Faculty of Art and Design, UITM Shah Alam. And we are so glad you could be here today to share your insight on discovery, design, process and development. And I would like to read a little bit biography about Zakiyah Hasan. Zakiyah Hasan is an industrial designer, educator and researcher who graduated a master degree from Scuola Politecnica di Design from Milan, Italy, specializing in product design and applying design participatory in many of her projects. She is also the co-founder of ArtRace, a customized watch design company. She actively engages in design entrepreneurship driven that encourage more people, agency and other sector to use design thinking to create positive change and continuous social innovation under her design consultant agency, Mobo Zaha Design Lab. Previously, she worked with Proreka Sdn Bhd, a vendor for automotive parts and manufacturing before joining UITM. She also has numerous local and international project experiences, including Hyundai, Ford, Kia, 3M Europe, Moleskine Italy, Ignis, Steel, Sharp, Keen, Mistral, and Petronas. Let us welcome Zakiyah for her sharing topic on discovering design process and development. So Zakiyah, it is over to you. You may start now. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Prof. Assalamualaikum. A very good day, good evening, and selamat petang to all participants and viewers for today's session. Again, I would like to appreciate my great appreciation to Prof and also to the CG unit for conducting this sharing session, so it can be a good exchange session among us. Right? I do hope today's session could benefit in knowledge sharing and exchange experience among us, especially the educators, students, and practitioners, and particularly for non-design background, to have better understanding in design thinking and the process involved throughout the project. Okay, so I would like to share my slide now. Okay, I know this is quite a busy week for all the academicians, especially in assessing students' project, final marking, and so on. But perhaps with this short time, we could share a little bit of a new knowledge, especially when it comes to area that is not common to us. Meaning, if we are not from the design background, so it could be a potential new area for us to explore and to practice. Okay, so today we would like to share a little bit of part and process of design thinking, because when you talk about design thinking, we have the 5 stages. So previously, our colleague did explain and share a little bit of design thinking strategies and methodology use, especially to solve the problem in a designerly way. But bear in mind, most of our nature as a designer, we do have a lot of collaborative design project, and we do practice co-creation activity with non-design people, especially in a collaborative project and multidisciplinary background. Okay, so today's session, actually, I will talk more detail on design, fields and industry, and a process and development of how we designer execute our project systematically by using design thinking concept or stages, right? Okay, so in this session, I actually divided into 3 phases. So the first phase of talk, I will cover a lot of overview of design thinking. I know some of us are already aware of what is design thinking, definition and all that, but just to recap and to have overview for a new viewer or participant today. And the second phase, we will have a look on the detailed design process and type of processes involved on mainly of our project. And the third phase, we will discuss more on design development that I've been working on the current project. Okay, I would like to share a quote from Mary Osmond. I don't claim to know everything, but I claim to be a seeker of knowledge. So again, I believe we as a researcher, educator, and academician, we always believe the best to have a great extended of our knowledge is always to seek for a new thing, and always for to gain a new aspects of things that we haven't ventured before, that we never thought of before, right? Okay, so let us quote this design. Alina Wheeler did say that design is thinking made visible. And as we know, Steve Jobs, a co-founder of Apple, he did say design is not just what it looks like and feel like, but design is how it works. So there's a lot of terminologies and understanding of what design, what is the practice of design, and how should the design be. But as a practitioner and educator, actually, we came across a lot of intersection of understanding and also a belief of different conceptual in design. But we do have a standard parameter of understanding what design should focus on, especially when it involves in design thinking that relate with human and user interaction. Okay, so when we say about or we talk about design thinking, actually it's not a new thing. It has been practiced previously. I don't know, since previous century. Okay, and it's a common misconception that design thinking is new because relatively it's been promoted aggressively by this school in order to highlight the importance of design thinking in many aspects, including business, brand strategy, and so on. Okay. So design has been practiced for ages, especially not particularly in industrial design. As we can see, design involves building a monument, bridges, subway system, and those are all end products for design processes. So throughout history, good designers has actually applied a human-centric creative process to build meaningful and effective solutions. So even though previous years they don't have these so-called design thinking stages, but actually the practice is there. And the application of design thinking is not only particularly on design aspect, but non-design people also practice the idea of creative interpretation in how to come up with good solution. Okay, so for example, in this slide you can see one of the top furniture design designed by Eames. So in 1960s, the design is being produced. So you just imagine the design can sustain from 1960s until now. So just a quick overview of how impactful this design that could last decades. So it could adapt any kind of zaman to be accepted by majority of user. So this is another successful design outcome that I believe not many designer or brand or company are able to sustain this kind of design aesthetic. So just to have a quick history on this chair. Okay, in the early 1990s, husband and wife Charles Eames, they practice design by learning by doing. So this is in today's we say experimental and exploration. So they learn a lot by doing, by experimenting and exploring things that could be improved significantly. Okay, so they explore a range of needs and constraints before designing their final design Eames chair. So if you Google, Eames not only have this particular chair, but from the best chair that they design first in 1950s, they are able to produce a series of good furniture design until now. Okay, so they continue to be in production even now, and I think the fundamentals of good designs lies a lot within the process and development to make this design successful and accepted by a wider range of user and market. Okay, so what we can recap here is actually their approaches can be viewed as early examples of design thinking, meaning as they each develop a deep understanding of their user lives and unmet needs, because after all, people can say chair is just a chair, but there's a lot of needs and wants that customer desire in terms of selection of product that being used every day. So we are not going to wear the same clothes every day. We are not going to use the same utensil for at least 10 years. But those things sparks aims to create something that desirable, even though it's not a need, but it can be transformed as a want, because after all, a beauty object really grabs the attention of consumer or user easily. Okay. So despite this, an early example of human-centric products, design has historically been an afterthought in the business world, especially applied only to touch up the product aesthetic. So it's not it's a common understanding of how people perceive design. They say design is just aesthetic of the product or any object, but actually design is beyond that. Okay, so we will share how design can contribute beyond those aesthetic later on in the next phase. All right. So consequently, some of these companies move their designers from the end of product development process, okay, where their contribution is seen as limited. Back then, designers didn't have what we so-called the direct engagement in terms of decision making and the initial part of the process and development itself. So a lot of companies start to look the importance of design thinking, and significantly many large companies start to adopt or adapt design thinking in their business strategy in order to boost a lot of innovative solutions. Okay, so for example, I think this is the best solution of everyday projects, which this object itself can be utilized in many forms. Okay, for example, the first invention of very simple paperclip, and it has been used until now, and it is very essential element that we need to have in our stationery collection. Even though it's a simple, very straightforward lines of metal piece, but the significance of usage and practicality in terms of how massive it can solve very basic needs in user routine or user daily activity in combining a few layers of paper. So as you can see, these designers were actually innovators or inventors of their time. Even though a simple paper clip, some of us did not use paper clip just to clip a paper. Okay, for instance, sometimes I don't have the clip for my scarf. I use paper clip just to slot those pieces of fabric. So if you Google, there's a lot of multi purpose of usage using the paper clip in very creative way. So just imagine these simple tools can transform the flexibility of usage and the potential of how the object can be played or be used in a very creative way. Okay, so if you see these three objects, actually, I can conclude that design evolved. Okay, so starting from a very simple solution of paper clip just to join a pieces of paper, then it evolved. It evolved to a more sophisticated clipper, especially to hold, to properly hold a bunch of paper tightly that cannot be performed by the previous paper clip. So again, the evolve continues as our lifestyle and the way we work. So we have a stapler. Okay, so the function is the same with paper clip. It's just that the evolution of the product does meet the trend and evolution of how product and user interacts over the time. Okay, so again, that I did highlight that by having a design thinking, actually, it helps a lot of in terms of innovation of many objects, concepts of ideas that has not been think before, but can be produced widely or effectively with a consideration of design and especially, of course, the user and market. Okay, so design thinking really helps company to move their designer because, as we say, designer does not engage in the first level of the process to produce the end product to the company. So the designers have been moved from the end of product development process where their contribution is limited to the beginning. So having to know the importance of how designer can contribute to perform better and to help the company better in order to produce a good solution. So design thinking has been adapted well and has been promoted over the 10 years, especially when it's suggested by the Stanford School. And it really sparks the industry of innovation to closely and to effectively apply the design thinking stages. Okay, so if you can see here, as we evolve, the tools, equipment, utilities, artifacts will also evolve because after it really depends on the technology and how human require assistive object in their daily life. So there won't be a final design, so we so-called final design or absolute solution as we human progress and we keep changing. So there is no best solution. So we always, in design as well, we always keep changing in terms of how we can comply with many things, especially in this fast changing trend. We need to also consider a lot of things besides aesthetic. We need to have a great fundamentals of the technicality, the feasibility, technology adaptation, and also the capability of to produce or to commercialize the product. Okay, so as we all know, Apple is one of the brand that we would say we could use the brand or label as a best benchmarking on how they apply design thinking in a company strategy. Okay, so if you know the history of how Apple evolved, you can see that design thinking really plays a lot of significant roles, especially to establish an innovative solution that other similar company or competitors like IBM, Microsoft could not think of. Okay, so Steve Jobs and Apple team, they believe that product should emphasize on human, and because at the end of the day, the product should well interact with human. Unlike the conventional way of producing an object or product, they tend to create something that just for the sake of functional and technicality. Okay, so the consideration of human and also user consideration and user-centric does not been applied in the process of the product development. Okay, so again, when human-centric or user-centric design is approach proof to be a differentiation, the use of design thinking have flipped the financial benefits of creating products shaped by human needs, of course, because at the end of the day, the end market is always a user, is always a consumer. So if we keep producing a junk or a useless object that can be only used by certain period, for example, or we produce things that does not relay with the emotion of a user, perhaps the user won't use or won't have a great experience with the product. Okay. So we as a designer, normally we see our surrounding as a potential to explore any conceptual potential of improving the way we live, the way we do things, the way we practice things. Okay, so we are a good observant, and that is the common practice since day one you register as a designer. So we need to look closely and have a very good sense of observant. We study people, we study their behavior, their attitude, their interaction with objects, with human, with surroundings. Okay, for example, just from these images, we can see that humans are not the same. Okay, users are not the same. Everyone have different style of studying. Some prefer to have a proper sitting environment with well ergonomic chair and table. Some prefer just lay on the couch, and some prefer laying like this on the floor. So there is no best solution for human, because basically we interact with our environment differently. Okay. For instance, from this picture you can see how this lady do 2 or 3 activities in particular context, and you can see is using gadget while studying. Of course, she has a notebook beside. Maybe she's doing some sketching, and if you can see, she also have a few devices and stationery around her. So this scenario is can tell us as a designer more on how people perform their daily routine with a different mode or different approach. Okay, so this really gives a solution of how we can study people by having the main goal of empathy of we as a human being, to understand that the needs and wants could not be formulated in an equal manner, right? So we always try our best to come up with something that is fun and also practical to a mass market. But somehow there are certain market that need to be fulfilled with a unique solution and slightly different approach. Okay. So going to the design thinking, I'm sure maybe some of us did already know. So as meaning, design is actually an outline, sketch, or plan as of the form or structure of a work, art or edifice or machine to be executed or constructed. And thinking, we can have a meaning of rational, reasoning, thoughtful, reflective. So the two elements, when combined together, is actually really relate with the process of how design could be great significant in terms of to have a certain meaning and reasoning on the project that we want to propose. Okay. So it's actually an ideology supported by a accompanying process. So design thinking should always have a process, and I'm sure not only design thinking, but any other routine or activities does require a process. So it's a complete definition requires an understanding of both, of course. So if we only knew design thinking in a surface level, but does not have a great understanding on the process, it might as well affect what the process of development of certain concept, ideas, or product. Okay, so design thinking also represent a hands-on, a user-centric approach. especially to problem solving that can lead to innovation. So an innovation can lead to differentiation and competitive advantages. Okay, that's why we can see if you are in a business or entrepreneurship, we cannot have the same idea or same product for a long time. We need to always innovate and be a step forward from our competitors. So if we does not apply the design thinking, especially when you are a R&D company, for example, or if you are a manufacturing operation company, so perhaps we can have a problem in terms of to compete with a very new startup, for example, because you cannot catch up with the technology and how they cope up with the new knowledge of beyond the design itself. Okay, so it's a hands-on, user-centric approach and defined by design thinking process and comprises by distinct phases. Okay, so the phases is actually a development that need to compromise with certain aspects, especially time, resources, and also framework that been set by client, for example, or by company. Okay. So this is 5 phases of design thinking by the Stanford. Okay, so it's actually a common practice, I would say, not only in design industry, but other similar related field. Okay, it's just that sometimes the terminology used is slightly different, but the practice actually is the same. Okay, so design thinking actually we emphasize first on people, because in history we can previous study and analysis, we can see there's a lot of product and concept does not well executed and accepted by user and has gone a fail execution in market because they did not put a user or empathize in the process of development. Okay, so the design thinking, we promote these 5 phases and stages. First is empathize. Secondly, define, ideate, prototype, and test. Okay, so if you see, there's a lot of evolve in terms of the process by other school as well, or by other innovation agency as well. For example, an group, they extend the design thinking from 5 phases to the 6 phases. Okay, so it's actually the same thing. It's just that after the test, they promote how to implement the project or how to implement the ideas or concept. So basically, the first stage of empathize and define is to understand the problem, issues related to human or user, so we can have better understanding of what to propose or what to solve. Okay. Then the next stage is idea and prototype, in which the issue or problem has been synthesized, and we iterate the concept in ideas in these stages by exploring those possible solution in a different manner. Okay, so some industry or some design business, they have a different way of exploring or come out with ideation. Okay, and the final stage is materialize, meaning from the prototype that been produced, they need to be tested to the user or end consumer. And after the viability of the testing result been analyzed and improved, so the company or any agency need to have a proper strategy on how to implement or how to execute the project from the business perspective. Okay. Alright, this is another version of elaborated design thinking process. So from 5 to 6, and also this interaction portal, they did highlight the design thinking process in a very constructive phases, meaning from the 5 phases, they detail up according to the relation of how the design could be associated with an objective to have the product to be produced in a wider market. Okay, so it's actually the same process. It starts with the inspiration level. They understand, observe, and they have a point of value. So having a user or consumer or people to engage with the process, this really gives a great inspiration to designer, especially on those direct input of what actually user require or what need to be improved. Okay, so the second phase is ideation. It's the same. It's the similar stage. So the process involves ideate, prototype, and also the testing procedure, and finally implementation, in which the strategy start to embed business and commercialization to the proposal. So storytelling by having a target group, market group, or certain persona that what they want to direct, and they will do a pilot test. So, and then from the pilot test, they will have a proper business model that could fit their vision or objective to propose the concept of ideas. All right, so a quick overview of design thinking, especially for a non-design base. I could not play from the slide, so I will have the video play directly.
Design thinking is a 5-step process to come up with meaningful ideas that solve real problems for a particular group of people. The process is taught in top design and business schools around the world. It has brought many businesses lots of happy customers and helped entrepreneurs from all around the world to solve problems with innovative new solutions. Step 1. Empathize. The purpose of Step 1 is to conduct interviews that give you an idea about what people really care about. We need to empathize with their situation. For example, if you want to help old people, you might find that they want to keep the ability to walk around. In your conversations, they might share with you different ways they can do that. Later into the interview, you'll want to dig a little deeper, look for personal stories or situations where things became difficult. Ideally, you redo the process with many people with the same problem. Step 2. Define the problem. Looking at the interviews, you can now understand the actual needs that people are trying to fulfill with certain activities. One way to do that is to underline the verbs or activities that the people mentioned when talking about their problems, like going for a walk, meeting old friends for tea, or simply going grocery shopping around the corner store. You might realize it's not so much about going out, but more about staying in touch. After your analysis, formulate a problem statement. Some elderly are afraid to be lonely. They want to stay connected. Step 3. Ideate. Now focus only on the problem statement and come up with ideas that solve the problem. The point is not to get a perfect idea, but rather to come up with many ideas, like unique virtual reality experiences, senior-friendly hoverboards, or a modified pushcart. Whatever it is, sketch up your best ideas and show them to the people you are trying to help, so you can get their feedback. Step 4. Prototype. Now take a moment to reflect on what you have learned from your conversations about the different ideas. Ask yourself, how does your idea fit in the context of people's actual lives? Your solution could be a combination of a new idea and what is already being used. Then connect the dots. Sketch up your final solution and go build a real prototype that's just good enough to be tested. Step 5. Test. Now test your prototype with actual users. Don't defend your idea in case people don't like it. The point is to learn what works and what didn't, so any feedback is great. Then go back to ideation or prototyping and apply your learning. Repeat the process until you have a prototype that works and solves the real problem. Now you are ready to change the world or open shop.
Okay, so the slide is there now. Okay, so we have design thinking in the process of development certain ideas or concept. The fundamentals of mental model can be highlighted into 3 models. First, definitely the design thinking need to have processes. So commonly defined design thinking as a problem solving process. Even though the future process will involve manufacturing and production, there are still continuous problems that or issue that we need to solve along the way. Then the second mental models in design thinking is mindset shift, meaning in design thinking we explore as much as possible the potential of crazy ideas and how people perceive and how we designer think not in a conventional way. So we would say it's a changing the way you think or think out of the box or whatever terms that we can coin. So the third one is toolkit. We need to have the instrument or framework or any guideline that can be used by designers or non-designers along the way during the design thinking process. So basically the toolkit has been seen as a flexible, adaptable toolkit. And in design thinking, it's actually also a scaffolding to solve both organizational, often internal and end user, meaning our client, customer, or market, or even directly to the product itself that gives the problem in terms of features or maybe physical difficulties that designer found in terms of the design object. Okay, so the definition in the class often reference how design thinking combines different processes, tools and ways of thinking in order to handle a problem or project, and basically to dependently to produce successful, meaningful and effective result for the business and end user. Okay, so it needs to have association of market and also business, because at the end of the day, when we create design, not just for the sake of creating and that's it. It needs to have a strategic way of how the design can be used or can be improved quality of people by having to use it or to apply it and their routine or help them to perform certain activities by using our design or product. Okay, so we go to the next phase, which we will discuss a detail on design process. So we have design thinking, the understanding of design thinking, and then we go to design process. So again, design is actually an activity, and the process is defined as a systematic series of action and directed to some end. So the process must have a goal and an objective. When we solve something, for example, or when we want to develop something, at the end of the day, it needs to have a final objective to meet. Okay, so it's actually also a continuous action operation, a series of changes taking place in a definite manner. Okay, so it's not what we so-call pre-practice or pre-procedure that we can just play around. So basically in design thinking, there is a systematic approach, methodology or process that we also need to follow. Okay. So when we talk about process, basically there are two types of process. First is linear. Okay, linear is actually process or development is one in which something changes or progress straight from the one stage to another, meaning point A, point B, point C. So it has been designed that way. Okay, so as, there are certain industry and practice did apply this linear type of process. However, there's a lot of changing in development, especially in technology, manufacturing capability, and assistive tools for designer. The process of development start to change. The conventional of linear start to become a more experimental non-linear process. Okay, so non-linear has been seen as something that is not particularly follow a traditional manner of developing something. So the step-by-step is actually explored to be developed smoothly from one stage to the next in a logical manner. So it not necessarily have to start with this phase and then follow with a certain phase. Sometimes the non-linear procedure can have a reverse and also advance depending on the technicality or issues they change along the way. Okay, so instead it makes sudden changes or seems to develop in different direction at the same time with the same goal. Okay. Okay, all right. So what is design thinking type of process? Definitely design thinking portray a non-linear. Okay, so meaning, right, meaning we are not necessarily have to step by step execute the project by implementing the stages from empathize, define, ideate. Sometimes the ideate stages we need to also reverse back to our user, especially when there are certain aspect or element that we could not settle along the way. Then we have to reverse back to the beginning. Okay, so the process really made the exploration of understanding the capability of design in not just rigid and constrained practice. So it can be fun if we can understand of why sometimes the prototype need to be tested first. Then we go back to the user just to have a quick, quick feedback. Sometimes to follow the standard stages will require designers a longer period of R&D. So the best is to produce the product first, test it to our consumer, then we go to at the empathize level. So it really sparks the anticipated aspect sometimes during the process. Okay. So what are the when we say design, there's a lot of design field, industry, and practices. So from our background, we are industrial designers. So having industrial design, we often involve in many collaborative projects, not only product design, but also beyond our expertise. For example, when we say design, the word is pretty broad and we have a wide range of industry. But the one common goal is definitely to service people by developing innovative product that can improve their quality of life. So listed here, you can see types of design. practice for industry, we have ID, experiential design, UX, UI, service design, mechanical design, graphic design, and so on. Okay, so at the end of the day, the main purpose of having design thinking is definitely we want to come up with innovative solution, meaning along the way there is a solid agreement of how the solution should fit in terms of possibility, usability, feasibility, viability, that could help brand, company, or business to come out with a desirable object, particularly for user, and it is also viable for their business. Okay, so process, we have a different schematic, I would say, depending on the what field or industry you are in. Okay, for example, there are certain design company, they use a double diamond in their process. So double diamond is actually follow for students in a flexible and non-linear way. Meaning, first, when we have the project plan, and then we analyze the object or product under product discovery. Okay, then they narrow down under define. So what are the problems, issues, technicality that need to be solved under research, analyze, and synthesize. Then from that, they proceed to the brainstorming solution, meaning defining and prioritize the features. Maybe features of the function, maybe features of the product, maybe features of the option that they need to be integrated in the solution. And finally, to narrow down to deliver, meaning how to deliver by come up with a prototype, test, refine, improve, and at the end of the day, to have a final ready for the market. Okay. Then this is one of the example mainly used by the engineering design. We call it as the V design. Okay. So the V model basically the process execute in sequential manner. Okay. So if you see from the left side, okay, it's actually a classic design big test waterfall process for engineering project. So meaning when the project start, they follow this step-by-step waterfall process. However, as the technology and the capability of manufacturing or execution of the project, the linear way of the V diagram has been innovated to more practical and effective process. So you can see during the development, in between the stages, they can have an intersection of checking and testing and also validating the solution. Okay, so mainly used by the engineering project. Okay, this is a common design process model used by many design company. So we call it circular design process, in which when the design company receive a project, they start with initiation process, then preparation, then it will goes in a circular manner. So if you notice, within the stages, they also have several intersection in terms of sub process. This is common practice where certain deliverables cannot be met by only by a single company. So along the way, they need to check the procedure, the capability outside the process of organization. Okay. So this is an example of not direct to the design process, but sometimes when they do have in industry, when they do have a project, there are certain portion of design development that they require a specialist that they don't have in-house. So this design procedure need to be outsourced, and then the model will be slightly different. Okay. So to recap the design process, basically there are three fundamentals to understand. First, the design process has to have a framework. So the framework really need to have a proper guideline and also models that are suitable according to the business or project that any designer executed. Okay. And secondly, design process should have stages, phases, meaning a step-by-step procedure. So this really will assist the company and the team to organize systematic development of any idea, concept, or proposal. And the final fundamentals of design process is the consideration of resources. So when we do have a good design, idea or concept, and a process, a company or agency or any designer need to also look of resources, meaning in terms of human, their skills, capability, expertise, of course, budget, capital, materials, and manufacturing capability. Okay, now we are going to the next stage. Let's discover design and process. So I will explain step by step each design stages highlighted in design thinking models. Okay, first we have empathize. Okay, so what is empathize? Is actually a research procedure or protocol or method conducted to develop an understanding of user, people, consumer, market, and demographic. Okay, so in empathize, always people is our main subject to be studied. And there's a lot of project that we require consensus of people or user in order to have them participate well in our study. Okay, for example, as you can see here, when we want to approach a homeless, for example, sometimes they don't have a good background in terms of communication and so on. So it's really hard to get close and to chat with them. And sometimes it works and sometimes it's not. So it's really a try and error. But again, if this not successful being executed, so we as a designer sometimes have to shift to other method or approach. Sometimes we need to be engaged in the society or community in order to understand them. Okay, so in empathize, there's a lot of methods or tools or framework that we can use for us to help us to along the process. Because sometimes when you just interview a person or a user, if you don't have a specific guideline, so it could be difficult for us to really understand what we want to achieve from the interview, meaning or from the observation. So there's a lot of method and approaches that we can apply for designer or non-designer. So list here is example of common models, approach, and methods that we use in order to study empathize among user or consumer. We have beginner mindset, meaning we cannot expect us as a professional knowing everything. So when we evolve in certain a society or community, we need to really free our mind, as if we interview a homeless, then you need to pretend as a homeless, and we need to have the mindset of the similar what they think of us. Okay, so ask what, how, and why, or we can just have 5W1H interviews. We can do observational. We can conduct empathy with analogies. We can use photo or video user-based study. Also, personal photo and video journals could help designers in this process. Shadowing, cultural probe, ethnography, engage with extreme user, and or we can have journal or user diary. Okay, so this is one some of the approaches that we use in this process. Okay, so when you can capture those issues within the context of user or people, it really give a lot of insights. Sometimes the best is to observe or to watch how their interaction with surroundings, with other user, object, or anything. For example, there are certain projects we expected we gain something from interviews. Unfortunately, the respondent did not give sincere feedback. So we have to shift the approaches by having a different type of respondent, and we apply shadowing because it's really hard to make them talk. Okay, so we need to act. We have to berlakon and be in the society. I would say it's short shadowing in order to really study their behavior and perception. Okay, so this is some of the tools that can be used in empathize process. Okay, so that is the engagement of empathizing directly to human. Okay, but there are certain process that we also need to put empathize in terms of acting us as a main user. Okay, meaning directly to product or feature usage. For example, you can see this product. Okay, so there's a lot of buttons. So for common user, it's a bit confusing. So with a small indication, it would really make the process of choosing the right button difficult, especially for elderly or people with a vision problem. Okay, so in a sense of product features, it could be also categorized under empathize, meaning we put ourselves as a user, okay, and experience the problem. Then the second example, as you can see here, the problems with interface or system design. Just imagine how complex the interface design. Maybe for the pro, they don't have a problem, but for the new worker or people that are not in the familiar page, they would have difficulty understanding those complex icon or features design. Yeah. Okay. So again, we need to put user complexity and have trouble in finding or navigating effectively in any surface or object. So it could really help to understand what are the things that could be innovated or solved. Okay, then empathize, actually we can categorize under three category. Okay, first, when you look empathize, Okay, first we have cognitive empathy, meaning what user or consumer think in terms of how they perceive things. Okay, so not everyone has the same ability in analyzing or understanding things in a simple manner. So when we put cognitive empathy as our consideration to understand people, then it could help us to come up with not complex or intricate solution. Okay, secondly, we have emotional empathy. Of course, when it involves user and consumer, the interaction with objects or things that we want to propose always have the empathy level. Meaning if we propose something for elderly, so we need to have a great understanding of how the emotion or behavior of them towards other person of that taking care of them, their emotion towards how close we can guide them to use or to explore something. And finally, we have compassionate empathy, meaning feeling someone's pain and taking action to help, feeling someone's pain, taking action to help. Meaning sometimes there are certain focus group or target group, they are unable to tell a true story. They are able to project their empathy when we interview them. Okay, so the compassionate empathy is always the best option for designer to have better consideration if we are unable to get the real scenario or real feedback from the user. So in balancing all type of empathy, cognitive empathy could be concluded as emotional and more logical. Emotional is less logical, and compassionate is to balance the logic and emotion. Okay. Okay, this is one of the example of empathize level from the construction of concept. Okay, so there are certain concept of ideas is initiated by non-design people, meaning engineering, system design. Okay, so when they want to produce something or they want to propose or construct something, normally the main goal is feasibility, practicality. That's all. Then functionality. So that is the main consideration of non-design people. Then they will progress towards safety, especially when they start to develop the solution to fit the technicality and people that will be used the product. Okay, so the final part, this when we see designer plays an important role to make sure all the solution, even though it's technically and feasibility solved, it has to give a good reflective outcome that is friendly to a user. So we as a designer need to consider of how people will interact with this transport. So we will give reasoning to each part of components that need to be integrated in order to make the package well for the user to be used. Okay, so and the final part, the design thinking already solved in terms of how the object should be executed before can be used by end user. And the additional part is when we know there are certain market or focus group, they have different tastes or different consideration in terms of how good the product would fit them. So this is the marketing purpose where they need to have a variation of design just to target different segmentation of user taste. Okay. Then we go to the next stage is define. So basically, when we put empathize in the first level, we need to extend the process to defining, where research findings and observational will be synthesized to define problem or related issue, especially experienced by the user of people. So of course, during the define stages, there are also tools that or approaches that we can use to help us to have better understanding of consumer, customer, or user. We can use 5 whys method. We can use innovation mapping framework, user journey map, analogy thinking trees that been used by many problem solving in engineering. We can also use empathy map. Some of project did apply SWOT analysis, GPS map, and Scamper, personal canvas, and also BMC. So those tools and framework actually can fit certain project and can fit different types of design project. Okay. So for example, this is one of the best solution if we say the system is been well thought in the first place by using a design thinking, meaning they put up empathy first. What are the issues faced by customer, especially in food ordering, kitchen, and also purchasing. So the whole ecosystem need to be well defined in order for designer to come up with what is better solution. Sometimes not to particularly have a tangible design, but to help in improving a service. Okay, so one of the best example is drive-through service system. Okay, in this defined stages, so basically there's a lot of aspect that can be explored, especially insights, things that sometimes a common or traditional way of research cannot help designer to grasp a unique insights from a user. Then we can have better needs from user, and we can redefine the services or solution, and we can help in ambiguity and solve the uncertainty, because by having a defined process, we know that there are certain things that designer or user cannot solve because of a certain aspect. Okay, and finally, of course, time and space. Okay. So this is a case study system that actually we have video, Prof, but I'm afraid that we will experience the same technicality problem. So I should skip, perhaps. Boleh, Prof? Okay, later I will share the link of the video for us to just to have it. Okay. Okay, so under the define, from the case study, they can map actually a traditional restaurant drive-through and pick-up, and propose a modern restaurant drive-through pick-up. So this really gives a direction for any proposal or any projection of how the company want to improve or innovate. Okay, then we go to the third stage, that is ideate. So when we have better understanding in empathy, we define it very systematically, and we start to ideate. Okay, so ideate again, we don't have standard rules. It depends on project and nature of design. Okay, so there are tools that are practiced that are commonly used by designer is sketches, mind map, storyboard, skits, illustration, concept, projection or proposal, and some of us do mood board or inspirational board, and also idea collages. So it depends. For apps design industry, they don't do idea collages. So they do illustration and mind map of how to user journey map to use the apps. Okay. Alright. This is example of mood board. Okay. Macam industry like fashion, textile, apparel. Some of the company branding, advertising, they did practice using mood board to have an overview of how the design should look like and the direction of the overall aesthetic look. For example, from the mood board, they can project slightly how the design criteria and aesthetic would be according to the mood board or inspirational board. Okay, this is a sample from the app's design. So they do manual sketches, and some of them have illustrated in using software. So before they develop a real mockup in a system, they apply sketches, framework or wireframe for the project. Okay, then when we have idea, so the ideation or concept need to be produced in a tangible manner. Okay, so the process involves experimentation procedure to build a real physical, tactile or tangible representation to have a better understanding of the solution in terms of three-dimensional because some objects need to be evaluated in terms of ergonomics, human factors. So this prototype process really helps in design process because sometimes when we just sketch or make in a 3D CAD software, computer-aided software, there are certain features or tactile consideration that it has to be evaluated in virtually. So to have a prototype really helps designer to evaluate in terms of sizes, proportion, usability in terms of the mechanism, jointing. And also the technology that require the product to be produced later on. Okay. Okay, so this is the example of very simple prototype in a scalable size. Meaning, sometimes when the product or solution is quite big. In the first stage, it's quite big to be produced, and we don't want to waste material and time. So we can have the quick prototype in a scale manner. Okay, so it don't necessarily have to be a full scale because in this stage we still want to evaluate the overall physical of the design proposal. Okay, so this picture shows that stages of prototyping a chair. Okay, so as you can see here, the first stage they just need to understand the fundamentals of and component of the chair. It has to be headrest, backrest, main structure to support the backrest, seating, and also the base. And then they expand the prototype to a more elaborative way. And then they start to use actual material, but as you can see, it is consistently in terms of size and proportion. It's just that evaluation start to happen in terms of the usability of material until the end prototype. Okay, then when we have a prototype, we need to test definitely. Okay, for example, if we develop an app, we still need to have a dummy of apps and test it to a user. So normally, when the app is ready or software is ready, they will call up a focus group to test the solution, and from there, they can gain real feedback of how practical is the product, or how practical is the solution. Okay, so the test sometimes can also involve sketches and diagram, or it could be a paper interfaces, or it could be a storyboard. For example, if you want to launch a new system, so the storyboard need to be developed as well in order to understand the flow of the usage of or application of the web. Okay, then we have Lego, also called modular or interlocking prototypes, meaning there are certain solution or parts that is developed by using an existing component. So they try to use carry forward parts or components and interlock with the new parts. So it really save a lot of cost rather than to produce a newly components or solution. Okay, then we have role playing. Okay, physical models that is commonly prototype mode, and user driven prototypes, meaning directly tested to the user. Okay, so to conclude, for the testing procedure, basically the main idea is to check with user in terms of usability, and when they satisfied in terms of visibility, we will extend the test or the feedback in terms of aesthetic or appearance. Basically, to know the desirability, meaning is the design okay? Is the color okay? Is the shapes reflect femininity or masculinity? So, and this is really helps a company to use it for a branding to the product. Okay. So again, this is the final test procedure. Normally, in testing procedure, it will involve two types of prototype. One is high fidelity model, and one is a low fidelity model. So, what is high fidelity model is actually prototypes that engage user to use. Okay, so it takes the idea as close as possible to a true representation, meaning normally it will be 80% to 90% accurate in terms of material size, feel and look. Okay, so high fidelity prototypes are assumed to be much more effective in collecting through human product performance. So at this stage, we can really gain a direct feedback of how the product perform. Okay, and the other one, low fidelity, in theory, normally in a very rough, so-called mock-up look that are typically quicker to create. So normally low fidelity, we did not engage interact user to test. Okay, so low fidelity prototypes are helpful in enabling early visualization or of alternative design solution. So it is rough, very quick to help designer to explore in terms of technicality and sizing. So this is another video as well.
The main innovation is taking a technique which is commonly extremely expensive, use that technique and put a little bit of IKEA thinking into it, and making it less expensive and affordable, still as beautiful.
Exactly like we made it in drawing. For us, it's very normal to work together. You also work together with technicians and product developers and suppliers.
We wanted to make a chair that haven't been seen before and want to stretch the way of using layer glued.
Each curve by themselves are not so complicated.
Layer glued is basically like bending a paper. You can bend it in one way, but you cannot bend it in 2 or 3 ways.
From the beginning, I think it was that we want to challenge our suppliers to do something that we normally don't do.
And when you come to this factory where they have been working with for over 100 years, they have so much knowledge, and I find it very inspiring to learn everything they know about this very beautiful material.
They said when we come with it that it's no problem, but afterwards we heard that it was quite complicated. And I think they did know that from the beginning, but they didn't say that.
We have to develop how to handle the veneer, which direction we have to put them in the pressing tool.
And I think we have done 50 different kind of construction. And then finally, it goes through the testing.
We have learned a lot from IKEA, and I think they have learned a lot from us too. So I think this way to handle this product has been very successful for both of us.
The people involved in product development are in fact creative. So it's not just about the designers, the product developer, the technician, the factory guys, the ones who's doing the packaging. They're all creative people, but they're specialists in their fields.
Okay, so the final stage is implementation. It's actually a process where further strategic action need to be executed and put in vision, goals, objective into effect. So there are certain projects that definitely we start from advertise to test, but if after the test we analyze and we the company, for example, does not satisfied with the result, then maybe the team need to revise or reverse back the process until the final proposal is agreeable by all parties or management level, for example. So after the test, there's always for a good product or solution, the company or organization need to have implementation strategy. Meaning before it can be produced or manufactured for a market, company need to identify the strategic of how to market the product or solution for a better position in terms of budget, in terms of time frame, and also visibility of the product to be used by users, for example. So in implementation stages, normally a company organization will have innovation mapping framework to help them to identify what stage of innovation is this project involved. Then they will set a trend or market benchmarking, meaning they will need to identify or study a competitive or similar brand that have a similar solution. Then they will set a product or design positioning to fit which market. Of course, after that, they will fit to flexible business model canvas that are suitable for that particular product or solution. And finally, they will start to have a complete A to Z process of new product development. Okay. So let's discover, design, and development. Of course, I have a few design collaboration before, so there are a few design I cannot share because I need to request a consensus from the clients and company. So this one I will share current latest project that we collaborate with UiTM Sungai Buloh and also other engineering and medical team.
Ready and action.
This is the most remarkable restaurant I've seen in all my years in the food service industry, and I've seen it all. I want to hear your story. Here you are. How the heck did you come up with this?
Oh, I didn't. We did. Dick McDonald, my brother.
Hi. Boy, I gotta tell you, this is the most... Well, it's nice to meet you.
The McDonald's brothers, what those two boys created, changed everything. This changed everything.
Care for a little tour? Speed! That's the name of the game. The first stop for every McDonald's hamburger is the grill, manned by two cooks whose sole job it is to grill those all-beef beauties to perfection. Meanwhile, as the patty cooks, our dressers get the buns ready. Watch out. Burger crossing. Burger crossing. Burger crossing.
Mac and Dick McDonald stumbled onto a new system to fix the ills of the drive-in business, essentially, which is what they were in when they started.
They're sort of the Henry Ford of fast food. So they developed this choreographed way that food could be made in 30 seconds rather than 30 minutes.
We wanted something different, and that's when my brother here comes up with one of his brilliant ideas. Tell him, Dick.
Orders ready in 30 seconds, not 30 minutes.
And you were gonna love how we did it, Dick. You gotta tell him.
The tennis court?
Okay, he brings me out to this tennis court, and he's drawn this line, the exact dimensions of our kitchen.
Sink on the right, extruder on the left. Okay.
And Dick is running around with this stick, marking where all the equipment should be.
Tuck in. Tony, are you gonna skip the pickles when we're really doing it? Yes. No. No. Catch up! Use your lazy Susan! And pickles, and pickle, and mustard!
The Speed D system is born,
And it's off to the races.
and we are an overnight sensation 30 years in the making.
What are you doing? There's time to lean, there's time to clean. Let's go.
They didn't just create fast food as we know it, they had to invent all the things that we take for granted that didn't exist back then. So one of the things they did was they created a little machine, like a flour sifter looking kind of thing, that they would just push a button and the right amount of ketchup would drop right onto the bun every time.
Now, where'd you get those?
We made them.
Made them.
Yeah, custom built. Whole kitchen is.
It's a really incredible story because it shows you the excitement of this company at the beginning and what it must have felt like to stumble on this for a businessman like Ray Kroc.
A fresh, delicious burger from grill to counter in 30 seconds.
What they started, it really created the thing, except that Ray Kroc saw it and saw the future.
You don't seem to realize what business you're in. You're not in the burger business. You're in the real estate business.
The McDonald's brothers, their future went about that far. Ray Kroc's vision of the McDonald's future was endless, was boundless.
Okay, so we are at the end of the slide, Prof.
Okay.
Okay, so I believe the best design practice is where the process and ideas dive together in an exciting explorative journey. So that's all for my sharing in design thinking process and development. So I open for any question.
Okay, thank you very much, Zakiyah Hasan. I hope you all enjoy this amazing presentation. I found it interesting because it is quite meticulous and it's tell everything about design thinking in general. Okay, now Zakiyah will answer some questions that were sent to us during the presentation. I have received a private WhatsApp from from my colleagues. The question is that on the selecting the sample, the selecting of the respondents or the subject for the inquiry research activity. Because this is like a qualitative research methodology, as we know, there is no rules to follow in determining the number of sample size. But based on your suggestion, Zakiyah, how many is sufficient to get engaged with the respondent in order for you to leverage the information into the design of the products? Yeah, that's the question.
Okay, thank you, Prof, for the question. Again, it depends on the project itself. Normally, when we have the project brief, a company or a client will set the rules. Even they don't have a parameter to follow, normally they open for the designer or researcher to set an ideal number of respondents. For a bigger company, for example, they require at least 100 to 500 participants, depending on the complexity of the project. If it's a new product, definitely 500 is not enough to do a survey, open survey. But there are certain projects that does not require a huge amount of respondent. We will have at least 10 to 50 respondents for a very deep, in-depth interview session. For example, the one we engage with Hospital Sungai Buloh, we require only 30 respondents to test the prototype and to be involved in the research project. So really depends on the project terms, time, and also level of complexity of the solution. So it depends.
Okay, that's a good answer. Okay, we here I think in the list of participants we got the acting deans of the Faculty of Art Design, Dr. Muhammad Jamil Maisa. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Dr. Jamil. Thank you.
Okay, another question with regards to the testing feedback. You mentioned about testing feedback is a one way in order to verify the products. So is it good to verify the product with the same respondents, or is it good to verify the product with other respondents? What is your opinion on that?
Okay, for a prototype and a product, actually, we require the same user or consumer who use it in the first stage, because during the development, we won't have only one option of prototype. So after the first stage, there will be an continuous amendment. So we need to have the same user to give the feedback from prototype level 1, prototype level 2 and 3. However, if we did not satisfy from the feedback that been given by them, then we will switch to another group of new user or new tester lah.
Okay, so I would like to open the question to the participant. Is there any question from the participant? Ada apa persoalan?
Hello, Prof.
Yes, Susan William.
Yeah, I'm Susanna William, actually from Business Management,
Susanna.
UiTM Sarawak. And hi,
Okay.
Puan Zakiyah.
Hi.
Yeah, so roughly this is very new to me, design thinking, because now I'm doing a concept paper on our traditional headgear using beads. So it's a very authentic and very old kind of headgear, which only currently being used by the community, especially the IBAN community for weddings and whatnot. So if I were, I already have a design on it, and if I were to write on a concept paper on the headgear, would I just, can I skip that process? That's number one. Number two, I've come up with a new design of headgear, which using different, I would say different medium or different. Instead of the conventional beads, I use Sago beads, for instance. So, can I skip the process, or can I just say it a prototype, or is for testing? I hope.
Okay.
Yeah, my question is clear.
All right. First of all, very interesting project, Dr. Susanna. And not many designer would like to, to get involved in so-called cultural-based product solution. So the first question is, can you skip the process? From my point of view, is better not to skip, because sometimes the process really gives you many anticipated elements that you are not able to discover using a conventional research method. Meaning, yes, you can apply any motif or a ready-made material. But if you really interview them, for example, in an empathize level, it will help you discover is actually the meaning behind the motif is not the motif itself. Sometimes it can be a philosophy of using the headgear itself. So if we skip the empathize level, empathize process, for example, so maybe you won't get those input or those insights that can justify why they wear or they use that particular headgear in that certain way. Or you skip one of the process, for example, an idea. By right, if you can have a prototype, basically you have the idea process. It's just that maybe the idea is not mature enough. Maybe you have one or two solutions, then you jump into prototype. Okay, so it's okay, and as long as you did not skip the whole process, because sometimes when we have the same process with our students, we require at least 30 or 30 or 50 ideation, and they can only give us 1 to 10 sketches or development. So commonly we see if very limited exploration been done in the idea process, student won't be able to project a mature design solution. So it end up it will look like an existing product, or it will end up they won't have a solid justification of how or why the idea transform that way. Okay, so better not to skip the process. So in your paper itself, you will explain why those step-by-step process really help you determine the end product that that require a lot of consideration before putting a cultural representation to that particular solution. I hope I did answer your question, Dr. Susanna.
Yeah, it answered. Yeah. Now I can see the picture. Yeah, because it's the what. Yeah, because it's a cultural. I mean, costume, and now that you're looking at different motifs, different materials or medium to use. So I thought that you can skip on that and just go straight to prototype. Okay,
So,
all right.
yes.
Now I get a clear picture because this model is very new to me as well, and I did a lot of thinking, and I bought Prof's book as well. Yeah.
But it's good
Okay.
if you can apply in your project, Dr. Susanna. And we have a lot of a similar nature project in our faculty. And if you can, for example, in the stages of idea, if you can explore a different motif, for example, or a different philosophy of culture element that you can embed it in the design, I think that it will help you to come up with more unique and dynamic creative design proposal, especially for the cultural based
Okay.
outcome.
All right. Okay. Thank you. I'll take note of that, and I'll look back at my paper, and I know I need to do something, and this today's topic is very, very interesting, and thank you for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Susanna.
Okay, any other question?
Salam, Prof.
Salam.
Wan. Boleh
Boleh
tak I membantu to answer
Last apa? Design speaker. Okay.
ya tu
Boleh,
menambah sikit lah.
Yeah,
Because
okay.
it's a good kata apa soalan from Susanna tadi doktor ke, I'm not sure. Okay.
I'm Susanna, I'm not doctor yet. Belum lagi. Inshallah soon.
Okay. Sometimes in design, okay. When we talk about design thinking, because the process is not kita tak ada a linear process. It's not like traditional process, where traditional is very linear. You have to do something, you got the answer, then we go to the next method. Unlike design thinking, you can start from anywhere. Let's say kalau it's not necessary for you to start orang kata apa do research. You can start with doing your prototyping. Kan, let's say your headgear. You do your prototyping because in design thinking, we are trying to find a new meaning in terms of orang kata apa, if you look at level of design, maybe new meaning in aesthetic, maybe new meaning in its behavioral, the usage of product, or new meaning in reflection. What does the headgear mean to the people? The reflection. So it can be started with from intuitive. You is your orang kata apa intuitive, your own intuitive. Maybe you kata, I want to do the headgear like this. You do it first, then maybe you can find your answer from the headgear. Maybe you boleh panggil certain focus group or whatever. Mungkin you can ask. Then ask them to evaluate what is the meaning of the headgear that you buat to them. So it can be like that because in design thinking kita tak semestinya you have to start from doing a research from must be survey whatsoever. It can be starting from prototyping.
I
so
see.
That, yeah.
Yes, Prof. It's an
iterative process.
so
Yeah.
Iterative.
Yeah, it's an iterative process. So you can start from prototyping, then you can ask people, then you can develop your headgear, then you go back, because design thinking is about finding new meaning in design.
Oh, all right. Okay. Then that's very clear because I started with the prototype. I what to do design, yeah, and then see whether dia sesuai ke tidak, because the one that we have is very bulky and it's what do you call that, is heavy. So find other ways so that there will be new generation would go and appreciate their own, what do you call that, their own culture, their own costume, because this is it's not made of metal and so if it's just beads, but and it's very colorful, and some says, oh, it look like a clown if you were to put on that headgear, things like that. So yeah, but actually I'm not from art and design, just I'm from business management. But I have a friend of art and design, Dr. Wan Samayati. So so I did learn a lot from her. I did ask some question. I mean, ideas, like especially like colors and all that. But like what Dr. Wan was saying, Dr. Wan, is it?
No.
Okay, one Puan was saying that we start off with prototype, and then from there we can we can call a focus group and ask question. I mean, find out what do you call that? Have our focus group and see what they think of the new headgear, new design and motifs. Yeah. Okay, very, very helpful. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Okay, I think we
Thank you, Miss Wan.
I think we come to the end of the line because it is almost 4:30. So I'm sorry for the several hiccup during the session. I think maybe because due to the technical reason. But I think this presentation is very interesting and hope it's benefited both academia and the practitioner. If you have any other question, maybe you can email directly to Zakiyah, or maybe Zakiyah can maybe you can call her as well, or making a SMS or chat. Okay. Right. Thank you again, Zakiyah, for answering those questions and for the great presentation. It was a pleasure to have you with us. So this conclude the webinar. Thank you all for attending, and we hope you have learned and enjoyed these presentations. And don't forget to register your attendance. There is a link provided by the secretariat, attendance and e-certificate. You can get your certificate, e-certificate immediately after sign in the link. So thank you very much. Hope to see you again next month with other presenter for the CG of Design Thinking. We got 2 more. I think next month with Dr. Weli Veto Mall and we got the other one, Associate Professor Dr. Rosmadia Anwar, who will also talk about design thinking. Okay, thank you. Assalamualaikum.
Thank you, Prof. Salam.
Bye.
Thank you all.